Hello and welcome to Fall Through, your source for deep conversations about technology, software, and computing. I'm Chris Brando, also known as Scriptable, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the recent Cloudflare outage. Yes, it has been less than a month since we dealt with two other major, I guess Cloudflare is not really a cloud provider, but, two major infrastructure of the internet providers having really, really big outages. So this adds a third, and then I guess if you count the one earlier this year in June, this is the fourth. We've been having a lot of these lately. So Matt and I are going to talk about that, and then per usual, our conversation will go wherever it goes. And of course, we will have extra bonus content for our supporters. If you're not a supporter, head on over to fallthrough.fm to subscribe and sign up today, and give us a follow on social media. And if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and that like button. It really helps us out. And with that, let's get into the show. Hello, viewer, listener. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you weren't too affected by that Cloudflare outage we had last week. I guess by the time we shipped this, it would have been last week. But it was a couple days ago, 2 days ago at the time of recording. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I did a little research on this, so I actually know what's going on and some of the perspectives. But it's a little panel today, just me and Matt. So Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Excited to record. Good day.
It's a good day. It's like a nice sun.
My services are up, so we're good.
You're like, throughout all these outages, Oxide's been running.
The Cloudflare outage did take down my personal website that runs in my house right now because I'm using their DNS proxy feature or whatever.
Oh, their tunnel thing.
So I was majorly impacted.
Yeah. Your personal.
Yeah.
You run your website out of your house? That's interesting. I've been thinking about doing something like that, but I'm just like,
I'm going to move it to Oxide. I just haven't done it yet.
Oh yeah, I guess it's nice having access to a rack where you can just I can just deploy stuff on.
Try to move it over there. Why not? I don't have to worry about power outages or anything. It's great.
Yeah, that's excellent. So Cloudflare, they had an outage this week, and I guess we can give like a little bit of a summary of what happened. So this is another. I guess this one's kind of complicated. With the AWS one, it boiled down to really like some DNS records being wiped out, and that causing lots of problems. This one was also a distributed systems problem. So it boils down to there was a configuration problem that led to a panic in some Rust code that took down a critical path service that then just took all of Cloudflare down effectively. Like you could not route traffic through Cloudflare because this service just kept panicking and dying. So what was happening is there's this bot defense system that Cloudflare has, right? So it can protect you, right? Cloudflare, they're primarily like a CDN, but also like a web application firewall. So they can do things like block DDoS attacks. They can do nice permission-based things. They also have their own little like cloud platform-ish thing. You have workers, you can do some compute at the edge, really cool stuff. But one of the nice features they have is a bot prevention system. So it can prevent AI bots, it can prevent malicious bots, it can prevent just any non-human computer from accessing your websites or your APIs or things like that. And the way it does that is with some machine learning, and it kind of analyzes the requests that are coming in. So you have a bunch of requests coming in, it kind of looks at the shape and properties of this request and says, yes, this is probably human, or no, this is probably not. And for each request that comes in, there's a scoring that happens for that request that says whether you should accept it or reject it. Now, to keep up with everything, these profiles, I guess you could say, right? The machine learning uses a configuration profile. They are refreshed every 5 minutes. So there's a whole bunch of, the parameters, the request parameters and all of that. Which ones it gets used and how they get used is part of a configuration file that's given to this piece of software. And that's the thing that's getting refreshed every 5 minutes. And it's getting refreshed from a database called ClickHouse, which is like kind of like very large distributed database. One of the pretty popular large databases out there. What happened is that they rolled out a change to ClickHouse to improve security. But what happened is that because ClickHouse has multiple databases in it, that change allowed the query that was being run to actually see multiple databases instead of just the one database. So before it was seeing one database, now it's effectively seeing two databases. And the query is not constrained per database, and these databases have replicated data in them, so it's effectively getting twice the amount of data back. So that's like the first step of the problem here. When it's making these new configuration files, there's twice as much stuff in them, right? And so the amount of stuff that they usually have returned from the database was about 60 items. Now it's returning 200 plus items. The next part of the problem is within the Rust code that runs this, that actually does the machine learning and analysis of requests. I don't know if it's machine learning, but does the analysis of requests. And it says yay or nay to a request. That was built with a hard limit of 200 pieces of information effectively. So it'd say, okay, when they wrote it, I assume they said, we only have 60 things. Let's put up some arbitrarily high number here, 200, hard coded it. And so the problem is when it was getting this extra stuff, you get these 200 in, it would return an error instead of a result. And the really critical problem here was that they were not handling the case where an error could get returned properly. In Rust, there's this thing called .unwrap, and if you get a result type, you can just unwrap it, and you get the result. But if you get an error instead of a result, when you call unwrap on it, it panics. And so what was happening is that this lower level was returning up an error instead of the result because the data it was getting exceeded the 200 item maximum. And then the code that expected to just always get a proper result got an error instead, called unwrap on it, and panicked. And so then it would just crash. And so any request that was trying to get through would get blocked and get bounced back with a 500 error. What complicated things is that this change to ClickHouse was rolled out progressively across the whole stack, not just all at once. So depending on which nodes got hit when it did this refresh, it would sometimes return the 60 results and sometimes return the 200 plus results. And since it was doing it every 5 minutes, it looked like every 5 minutes, sometimes it would start working again, and then sometimes it would not work because of the different, depending on whether a node had been updated or not. So at first, when they were diagnosing this, they thought it was a larger scale version of a DDoS attack they had been working on or working to prevent for the past, couple of weeks. And they got misdirected, which the amount of time it took to actually fix the problem. So I think this outage, they said, lasted 9 hours or something like that. It was a very long one considering the scale of it, considering the last major outage Cloudflare had only lasted half an hour. And they eventually figured out that this was the problem, and they rolled out a fix, and they, cleaned the whole thing and got the internet back to working. But the problem is that 20% of the web's traffic runs through Cloudflare. So when Cloudflare went down globally, so did a fifth of the web, which is absolutely absurd. So there was lots and lots and lots of stuff that was down on Tuesday the 18th as a result.
19% of that 20% is my traffic going to my website at home.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Matt's website makes up 19% of the web traffic. Yeah.
Yes. Don't know if you know, but just putting it out there. Oh, it's 20% now. Someone just came in. No, just kidding.
So yeah, that's the summary of what happened. It's a pretty gnarly thing to have occurred. Kind of ironic there's probably a lot of Rust haters out there see, Rust isn't the solution to all your problems. Maybe you should have written in a language instead of blah, blah, blah. But it really was just a user error, I think, at this point. I think it's really well known that you're not supposed to just unwrap things in production. That's just a bad idea. In the same way in Go, you're not supposed to just typecast in production without having a comma okay to make sure that you can typecast it properly. So this was just not enough layers of defense in the coding that people were doing here. It was just a little distributed systems bug that found the just right trajectory through the infrastructure and wound up crashing, bringing the whole thing down.
I mean, I feel like they got lucky with the outage window too, because it was early Eastern time.
Yes.
Early US Eastern time, and they were resolved by like midday Eastern time or something like that. I don't remember
Yeah,
the exact time.
because it was they said I think like 5:06 or 5:09 UTC, which would be noon Eastern because we're
Yeah.
-5 right now. So yeah, it was resolved by midday Eastern.
Yeah. And morning West Coast. So it's like you got really, I think they got really lucky with that outage window. Or
Yeah,
maybe not lucky. Maybe they deployed this at that hour because, whatever, right? Like maybe it wasn't just luck.
I
But
mean we got lucky, but for Europe this was their whole day,
no,
right?
totally. Yeah. No, for Europe, they got slammed, and that really does suck. And I feel like I guess what I'm trying to say is the AWS outage I was hearing from friends and family and people that are just not, lay people, not technical
Yeah,
people. This one I heard not a peep about from anyone,
right,
primarily because it was resolved before major working time
right.
US, so it just didn't really make the US news waves as big as the AWS outage did a few weeks ago, which I guess is good. But I know if I was in Europe, I probably would have been plastered with internet down, everything broken. So
Yeah. Yeah, there was like a couple $1 billion in value lost because of this, and then many billions, somewhere between 25 and 75 billion dollars in productivity losses because it took down so much stuff. A lot of AI systems, like a lot of like OpenAI,
basically
Claude,
all of them, yeah.
they all got
I saw
taken down.
Anthropic and OpenAI both had the same challenges.cloudflare.com or whatever URL it was is unavailable. And it was just an opaque error that you have no idea what that means to any person. And that's where it's funny, not funny, but like that's where it's interesting because again, lay people are using OpenAI products and Anthropic products. And when they
Right.
go there and they see challenges.cloudflare or whatever is not working, they have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
They don't know if it's a problem with their computer. They don't know if it's a problem with the service. And like, it's just not a good failure mode for your users. Us technical people, like we know, oh, they're fronted by Cloudflare, fine. But a layperson is just going to sit there wondering, oh, do I need to reset my app or like close my browser or something? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
So they could do better there.
It said ChatGPT, Claude, Character AI all went down. X/Twitter, Discord, True Social all went down. A bunch
Spotify,
of
baby.
gaming platforms, League of Legends, Valorant, Minecraft, RuneScape, Xbox Network all went down. And then some e-commerce stuff. So Shopify stores, Uber Eats, IKEA, Square Payments, and even McDonald's self-service kiosks went down. Oh, and Indeed.
You have to talk to a human. How dare you? No.
And apparently some DeFi stuff went down too. So Coinbase, Base Layer 2 Network, BitMEX, DeFi Llama, RBScan, and Robinhood all also suffered problems. And I know you love this one, NJ Transit. People could not purchase digital tickets.
Oh man, I wish I was still riding NJ Transit to New York that day because I would have flipped out. I would have been on social media saying NJ Transit sucks.
Yeah.
No, that's one of the benefits of working from home. Actually, a slight bit tangent there. When I applied to Oxide, I put that in my materials saying one of the reasons why I want to work for Oxide is specifically because they're remote and I'm really tired of going on NJ Transit on my 1 hour and a half one-way commute or whatever it was.
Yep.
1 hour 15. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
It took down a lot of really important stuff for people.
Yeah. No, it was a serious outage, and I'm not making light of it for sure because I know people were negatively impacted in many ways. But I think Cloudflare's transparency here on this issue is nice. I mean, when does someone actually show you a snippet of code?
Yeah,
Ever?
They got praised for how because they were ridiculously transparent with this. I think they needed to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made it so the markets did. I think their stock went down by 2%. So a large amount of market cap was just lost, like a couple $1 billion. But like all the analysts were like, yeah, this is just like this is a blip. This isn't like a deep rooted thing within Cloudflare.
Right. Yeah. It's not like Cloudflare is going to go down tomorrow forever and be dead forever. Like,
right.
It was just they understood what happened. It was a mistake in the system. They're fixing it. Great.
Right.
I feel like the AWS outage in comparison was one of those like, oh, you can have some deeper problems here if you don't fix this, because it showed how these systems are so intermingled. Whereas the Cloudflare was just like, yeah, we shipped some code and
Yeah.
We shouldn't have really shipped that code in that way. We know.
Like there's a lot of fixes for this, but these are like easy to patch holes, right? Like don't use .unwrap. Think more about graceful degradation if the system has to go down. Maybe segment it some so that it's pulling from two different data sources, so you're not always pulling from the same database, right? Change how you do rollouts, and also just fix the SQL query. That would have done a lot to fix this problem. So there's a lot of like small oopsies that happened here, but there's nothing about this architecture that stood out to me as like fundamentally flawed in the way that like the AWS one felt like was like, okay, this is just there's big old problems with how you design this system, and you're gonna have to find a way to extract yourself from that. But this one, it's definitely not that.
Yeah, I mean, again, the transparency was really, really beneficial, and yeah, I saw my fair share of Rust. You know, I don't want to say haters, but maybe that's the best word to describe them. But I saw my fair share of Rust haters saying the sentiment of Rust doesn't solve all your problems. You should have used this in Go. It wouldn't have happened. I'm just like, what do you mean in Go wouldn't happen? Like that one I thought was really funny because it's like, what do you actually mean there? Because I'm looking at a lot of the Go code out there, and a lot of people aren't actually creating their own custom error types either. So like, what are you asserting on? What would you be doing? You would still exit your program anyway. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, in Go, I would say that you wouldn't have a panic in this way, right? If you're writing similar code,
no, yeah,
you might have ignored it. Would have, if you ignore the error, it would have been weird, right? But you wouldn't have to handle the error. Maybe you handle it sloppily, but I don't think it would have resulted in like a hard crash like this.
Yeah, I don't think it would result in a hard crash. I think though, in this purely hypothetical way, if this were Go code and they did the whole if error does not equal nil, return error, it would just return up to somewhere in the call stack, which would just exit, or that path would just keep looping and the service would be down anyway, right? Because it would try again, error, try again, error. So it's like, sure, I very much believe it wouldn't have been a panic because generally Go people don't like use panics like that, and we don't have this concept of like an unwrap. But I think it still would have resulted in a system outage because like it would have just.
It probably I would assume it would be smaller scale. I think the big problem here was that like the process just exited. Yeah. Right. So it just crashed. And then you're like, why is it crashing? And you're like, and then another part of this too was like, well, their status page also went down for, I think, unrelated reasons. I'm not 100% sure about why their status page went down. But the other issue is that their observability system, when a crash happens, attempts to collect a ton of diagnostic information. And since it was crashing so much, the observability system made everything worse because it was like maxing out CPUs trying to collect all of this information.
Right.
So like a crash was probably like one of the worst things that could happen. And like in theory, in other programming languages, you would have likely had a degradation of service, but you probably, I don't think, would have had like the same blast radius of issue. But also, this is not so much like this is like a Rust problem. This is like you used a sharp edge of Rust in the wrong way and you got cut by it. And there are sharp edges in every programming language.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you didn't use unwrap here, right, and unwrap is going to panic the thread, right? Yeah. So if you're running multi-thread, then that one thread panics and not the others. But if this is a single threaded program, then like your whole program is dead, right?
Right.
And fine, that's a feature of Rust that you like. You know this, right? If you're a Rust programmer, you kind of know what you're doing there when you're using unwrap. And don't get me wrong, I use unwrap all the time in Rust when I'm doing like trivial things because I don't want to have to deal with the error handling and set up, leak code problems, trivial software that I write. If it's written in Rust, I'm using unwrap all the time. But I wouldn't do that in production systems. You'd have to think about that more. Unwrap is like, it's really meant to be like a tag, like a warning to the programmer saying, hey, you should think about this code much more than you are today, but here's the way to get out of it for right now.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit here and say that the people that let it go through to production at Cloudflare are like bad, because they're not. Like, there's unwraps in parts of the code here. Like, it's fine. It's just a more like, let's think about the failure modes of these things and what that means. And as you were bringing up about the observability system, it's not just a localized failure mode of the program, but like, what is this going to cascade into? And you really have to think holistically as much as possible and like design the system in a way where you minimize these things.
Yeah.
It's never going to be perfect, but at least you try.
Yeah, for sure. And like that's the thing of like, in Go this would have manifested probably as like an ignored error. Although a linter probably lots of things probably would have yelled at you for ignoring errors. But sometimes ignoring errors is legitimate. There's some things that will never return an error and they're documented as such. They just need to satisfy an interface or something. So yeah, I don't this is definitely not a programming language caused the problem. No, that's not. It might be fun to like joke about that, but that's not really what happened here. Um, there's another interesting aspect of this too that I saw some about people, I guess, raising concern about how centralized some of these platforms have become and how much we've centralized on them. Of like, oh, like 20% of the internet traffic runs through Cloudflare. And part of me is like, yeah, okay, I get why you're worried about that sort of thing. But the other part of me is just like, but you need to have that to do DDoS prevention effectively, right? You have to see a large enough volume of traffic to understand a DDoS attack is happening and where it's coming from. So it's kind of just like anybody that's out there screaming about like, oh, this is a problem with centralized systems. It's like not. Yes,
and
this
no,
type of thing can happen, but like that's not an argument for not having centralized systems, because if you didn't have centralized systems, then we would all still have to be dealing with DDoS attacks individually, which would make them far more difficult to prevent. So like, yeah, part of the internet, a fifth of the internet, whatever, was down for a few hours on a Tuesday in November, and that sucks. And the last major incident was 6 years ago, so we have like a 6-year window. And what do we all get for that? Well, DDoS prevention is on for anybody who runs their domain through Cloudflare. So like your little website or your big website hasn't gone down because they have DDoS prevention in place. And that's also like they were dealing with a DDoS attack. That's why they thought this might be part of it. And like none of us, I think, were aware that there was a DDoS happening against Cloudflare's infrastructure, right? And that's what we get. That's what we gain. And I think gaining that is far more valuable than a few hours of downtime on a Tuesday in November, right? So,
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm one of those people that don't like centralization. Well, I'm not gonna say that. I'm one of those people that do make that argument sometimes, where I'm saying, hey, centralization is not bad on its own, but we should consider what we're doing here. Like, you shouldn't just blindly say, I'm going to go sign up for Cloudflare without understanding that you are signing up for like a centralized service that can affect a variety of people. But that's not my argument for saying centralization is bad. It's just it's another consideration in the system design that you're doing for your company and your stuff. The thing for me though is like I could never provide the DDoS protection that Cloudflare provides. Like for like my home network. I have my website running here. It is fronted through Cloudflare's DNS proxying feature, right? Their WAF plus DNS thing. If someone were to go like DDoS my website, Cloudflare's dealing with that traffic, not me, right? Could you imagine them trying to deal with like my infrastructure here at my house trying to deal with a 100 gigabit per second DDoS attack? It wouldn't be able to. I don't have the compute to deal with that. Yeah. I just don't have the compute to deal with that. And then Xfinity is going to get mad at me for all the traffic that just got sent to my network. So it's like that's like asking every business store out there that has like valuables in there to have like a Fort Knox level security system. It's impossible. You cannot.
Right.
You can't do that. Not at that scale.
Yeah, and I do think like you could have. So I think like Fly also does DDoS prevention. I'm sure like Bunny and obviously Fastly do DDoS prevention. So there's definitely like you don't have to be as big as Cloudflare to do DDoS prevention, but you do need to be sizable, and it is like a specialized thing that you're trying to do. But also just having edge compute is extremely powerful in the modern day, which is really nice. And like cloud, like I think most of the major platforms have some form of edge compute, right? Whether it's AWS with their Lambdas, or whatever they're called now. I don't know what they're called now. Or Cloudflare with their workers, or Fastly with their, I think it's just called edge compute. I don't know what their branding of it is, or Bunny with their magic containers, or Fly in general is just a interesting platform because they actually handle traffic on their own backplane, which is kind of super cool.
Yeah.
So like that's the other like benefit of having these things. It's not just like the way that they prevent problems like that. It's also like the ability to put compute near where your users are, and just caching, right? The original purpose of a CDN was like, I don't want to deal with all this traffic for static assets. And you don't gotta, like, if you have a static website, like I'm sure yours is static, like a lot of that traffic is probably just served directly by Cloudflare, and it's not hitting your box locally much at all. Cloudflare
Sure
has to
is.
reach back when it like needs to do a cache refresh. So I'm like, all of that is like basically free. So it's like that's a
Yeah, I
it's
pay
an,
$0 a month for Cloudflare for this.
yeah, it's a really good model. But
I
the
am
only
the
way,
problem.
yeah, the only way that works though is if you do have like enough business customers to sustain the business for everybody that's not paying anything. So it's overall, I think this is like a real good setup, even if there are occasional problems.
Yeah. This outage did not change my feelings towards Cloudflare at all. I still enjoy Cloudflare. I their dashboard is still garbage to me. I can't stand their web console and dashboard. I think
God,
it's
their
the
dashboard
worst
is
in the
awful.
world. And I'm not saying that the people that made it are bad. I don't like it. I'm sorry. But the services that they provide, stellar. The transparency that they give during outage times and whatnot, stellar. So like I'm happy with the product overall.
Yeah. I mean, to compare and contrast it to the AWS outage, right? Like, I only read a little bit of the actual outage. I was mostly reading a research report that I use Claude to make. But like, even the fact that their CEO is the one that posted this, and then their CTO was on Twitter talking about this, it was like very different from like AWS, where it's kind of like, I mean, I read through that AWS incident report, and I'm like, this is dense nonsense. And in general,
Yeah.
Cloudflare outage or incident reports are they're very straightforward about like what happened, why it happened, what they're doing to fix it. It's like
But also,
very
it's like
human
it's
readable.
written exactly. It's human readable. It's written by a human. I guess for the most part, there's probably some AI in here. Who knows? But like, I can read this article. Like, I have it up right here. I can read this blog post summarizing the outage, and like, it's not a wall of text. They use paragraph breaks. They have links. They have examples and diagrams and pictures, and like, they just have things in here that, as a human, I can actually digest this entire 12-ish minute read article or whatever this is. I don't know how much of a read this is. I can digest this whole article in just 5-10 minutes or whatever. And like the AWS one, oh my god, I had to modify the CSS to read that thing because
Yeah.
it was a nightmare, and I had to make some paragraph breaks and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, you really don't care about who's reading this. Actually, you're just doing this to check a box.
Yeah.
Like, whereas Cloudflare, it's like they actually do care, and their CEO and I think CTO, two people I read on Cloudflare on their social media accounts apologized. They're like, hey, we're sorry about this. We know the importance of Cloudflare in your stack. We're working to make it better, and here we'll have a postmortem very soon for you.
Right.
And like, that's what I want to hear.
And that's the other thing. The postmortem was up the same day, right? It was a few hours after they resolved everything that they had it up.
Yep.
Which is also really incredible compared to like, I remember when we were doing the coverage of AWS, Azure had an outage, and it was a couple days later, and we still didn't have the incident report. I'm sure it's up now, but like, I didn't go back and read what actually happened with Azure, because I'm like, oh well, we did the episode, I'm going to move on now.
Yeah.
But like, it's real nice. Like, that's a missed opportunity for Microsoft, in that, like, people aren't going to be able to talk about what actually happened. They're just going to speculate a lot in the moment, and I guess you give up the chance to really take control of the narrative if you take too long to get the postmortem out the door, to get the incident report out the door.
Yeah, and I didn't get the feeling that Cloudflare released this early primarily to control the narrative. I know that that's probably one reason why they did it, but also I think they just have good visibility of what their stuff is doing, in my opinion. At least from the outside. I have no idea what it's like on the inside of this thing. But from my perspective here on the outside, it looks like they just really just understood, yeah, this is exactly where this went wrong. Here's how it impacts these systems. We know this. We fixed it. Here's the write-up. And like, they just knew what was happening with their stuff. Versus Amazon, I feel like there was a sense of not really knowing what's going on,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that helps a lot with this Cloudflare transparency thing.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's like, the we got big systems at play here, and we have to deal with those appropriately. And I think Cloudflare has learned from this, but also it's just like go back to the architectural standpoint, like nothing in how they architected how this system works. I was like, oh, that seems wrong, or you should have done it that way, or like why.
You want to talk a little bit more about the programming language hate thing? Because I've read many threads on that.
For sure.
So many threads on that topic. And it's kind of, I know we touched on it earlier, but I think it's good to revisit it a bit.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it because I was never I love my tools. I love my programming languages. I love the things that I use and I have, of course. Otherwise I wouldn't be using them, right? I love this camera. I love my phone. I love the keyboard. Like I love these things. But like, I'm not loyal to them either. You know, I don't need to like have an Android phone forever because that's just how I am, or a Panasonic camera forever because it's just how I am, or I don't need to write Go forever because that's how I am. And like, I just find that mentality of like, what do you even call that? Programming language affinity? I don't know. I find that sort of mentality to be interesting because it's almost conflicting with engineering sometimes, right? Like as an engineer, you shouldn't just be going to the same tools for every different job. You should be evaluating each job on its own merit from first principles, yada, 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 and then choosing the right tools for the job. So when people are just like, this is what you get for writing everything in Rust, or this would be fine in Go or in Haskell or whatever, I'm just, no, it wouldn't have, because you would just move the problems to other layers of the system where those tools are not good. You know what I mean? Like other problems would have happened instead of maybe you're right. This specific problem may not have happened, but other problems certainly might have happened. And I don't know. I just don't understand this industry sometimes with this whole like programming language wars or whatever.
You know, I think I understand it, and it's something I wanted to talk about in the episode anyway, so I can just talk about it now. Perfect. But like, I threw out a tweet, not a tweet, a whatever the blue sky posts are called. I blue skied. I think Brian Cantrell trying to make Skeet happen. I'm like, no. So I put out a post.
He doesn't know what the other meaning of that word is. So, you know what I mean? I got to talk to Brian. It's fine. Brian, if you're listening to this, we'll just talk, man. Okay. I love you, dude. We'll talk though.
The first time I heard that, I was like, oh, that's, yeah. I don't, okay. Anyway, moving on. No, like I put out a post of like No Nuance November that was just like, I think it was something like AI doesn't exist and never will. And I was thinking about this because like I've now actively like using AI because I'm not actively using AI. I'm actually using tooling.
You are the best AI boomer or whatever. What's the one that promotes it? Is it Boomer?
Booster.
Thank you. You are the biggest AI booster I know now. So I don't know what you're talking about. You're the poster child for AI.
I like the tools. I don't like AI. I'm like, this is the thing, right? Like I was thinking about this the other day where it's like LLMs are very useful things. Like it's like, even you say there's two things an LLM is, where it's like a natural language based interface to computing, right? So you can tell an LLM to do something, and if you have it as an agent, which Steve nicely explained to me, I was like, what's the difference between a REPL and agent? What is it called REPL? Like an agent is just like an LLM that can go talk to other things. So if you're using it in that mode, you're using it mostly as an interface. You're like, I want to talk to you in English, and then you're going to go talk to these different APIs or different tools or different systems and go do something for me that would probably be much more annoying, right? So a classic example is like, oh, query these different databases, and you can speak the different query languages and figure all of that out, and I don't have to sit down and do that. Or I was working on something yesterday for tooling for the podcast, and like I was like, wow, this MP3 stuff is not working properly. Can you like do analysis? And I like tried to install some tools and couldn't. So it's just like started doing hex dumps and looking at like the raw bytes of the MP3. And it's like, oh, I see what the problem is. And I'm just like, yeah, I would not have been able to do that myself. I don't know what like raw MP3 formatting on the disk. I could not read that. Sorry. So like there's like that aspect of it, and then there's like the lossy compression aspect of LLMs, where it's like a system that does lossy compression on the way in and then fuzzy output on the way out, which is different from how we usually see compression, right? Like JPEG, for instance, is lossy compression on the way in, but deterministic on the way out, right? You lost information when you made the JPEG, but every time you read the JPEG, you get the same exact thing back out. So like with an LLM, you lose information when it goes into the LLM. And then when you pull it out, much like humans, you get a different response every time effectively. Sometimes you get something close, but it's usually a little different every time you run the same query or whatnot. So when it's put like that, like extremely useful tooling we have here, right? It's you can have a conversation with something, and it's like about equivalent of having a conversation with a human, in the sense that like, yeah, humans might tell you wrong things sometimes, but you can have an actual back and forth. You can have a contextual thread going, and that's really helpful. Like you have an actual discussion instead of having, disparate queries that are going on that aren't connected to each other.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for like a lot of this tooling that we have, but I think that is true of other tooling that we've made. I think the compiler is one of the best examples of this, where it's like, I don't read assembly, and most software engineers don't read assembly unless like you specialize in it, and you're trying to like find compiler bugs or something like that. But like the whole world keeps working, even though most of us don't read assembly. And I think that's true of like most of the tools. Like most of us use, language server protocol clients and servers. Most of us use IDEs. Most of us use like all of these tools that help us more effectively and quickly do our jobs. And like LLMs are just kind of extensions of that, right? It's just something that allows us to do our job more efficiently, right? I don't have to, just like autocomplete made it so I didn't have to type out the whole method name or the whole type or whatever. Like having LLMs allows us to just be like, oh, now I don't have to even sit down and write the code necessarily. I can have it do a rough draft of it and then read through it and fix the things I want to fix, since code is a very easy thing to generate. Where I refuse to say that I'm like a fan of AI is that like when people talk about AI, they are not talking about the tools. They're talking about something else. They're talking about this other parallel world to it, where you have things like, oh, because we have LLMs, because this thing can do language processing, eventually it will become like super intelligent and we'll have AGI. And I'm like,
which is 100% factual information for those listening. No, Kris is gonna yell at me.
But like that's such a weird jump to make. It's not like that'd be like saying, oh, since we have compilers, eventually we're all gonna stop writing code. It's like, no, or even that we're all gonna stop writing assembly. It's like, no, it's just like a way to write assembly more efficiently. And that's what like LLMs really are. It's like that thing is thinking, but it's not thinking in the way that you're thinking, right? I think this is like a controversial opinion. And I'm going to say that when I say this, I don't mean in an equivalency, but in a kind of rough way. I think that LLMs are basically human, but not in like the living, breathing sense, but in the, if you talk about a human versus a deity versus a god, LLMs are much closer to human than they are to God. And when people talk about AI, they're talking about a god. They're talking about an omniscient thing that knows everything, that can, simulate the entire world and know everything that could possibly happen. Like that's a god. That's godlike behavior. And the thing that we have right now is basically human, like in the way I just said, right? It's like the information that goes in is lossy, the information that comes out is lossy, but it can still hold a contextual thread. It can make connections between things. It functions quite a bit like how humans function. And it's real weird that we're like, that a whole bunch of people are like, okay, this thing that is currently very human-like is going to become a god. And I'm like, that is a very silly argument. And that is what the AGI argument is. It's like, this thing will clearly become a god. And I'm like, where do you get that? We're not gods. None of us are becoming like gods in the omniscient deity sense. But you've made this like connection here that just doesn't feel like it's a correct conclusion to come through from the basis in fact, but it doesn't need to be, because it's all about hype. I'm like, this is my problem with AI. Even the naming of it, like it's an ill-defined thing that's just like a hype trap. and it pulls people along, and it pulls really good tools into the gutter where they don't belong, right? I would have started using LLMs a whole lot sooner if they were explained in practical, real ways, in the way that like Steve or Mitchell explains how to use them, not the hyped up nonsense that so many people in the industry run around screaming about. Even people that are well known and smart that just say stupid things like, "Oh, we're gonna get to AGI" or things like that. And I'm like, you can't use the current things we have as a basis for that. But like, it's not new to AI. We did it with, once again, with blockchain. We did it with big data. We did it with so many other things. But I also think we do it with programming languages, right? Programming languages are tools, just like how LLMs are tools. And you can use them to do an incredible amount of different stuff. But when people have these arguments, have these wars about like Rust versus Go versus, Scala versus Python versus JavaScript versus TypeScript, all of these things, all of these wars have pretty much nothing to do with the languages themselves and everything to do with the hype communities that are surrounding them. So when someone goes and says, I knew Rust would do it, they're not making a good faith argument. They're making an emotional argument. They're like, I don't like this thing. I don't like this thing, what I believe it to be. I don't like this hyped up Rust nonsense. So I'm going to be against Rust. But it's like, it's not Rust that you're against. It's the hype community that you're against. It's all of the people, which are relatively small in size, that you don't like, that you don't want to interact with, that you want to deal with, that you want to take a chance to dunk on when you can because you perceive them to be people that are going to dunk on you when they have the chance. And like, I think that's the issue that we keep running into over and over and over as an industry. We refuse to look at our tools. We refuse to look at the things we have as actual tools, as things that's like, yeah, this is the tool I chose to use for this job. I could have used a different tool. Perhaps that other tool would have saved me time. Perhaps it would have caused less waste. Perhaps it would have done a whole bunch of things. But it's a tool I chose and it's not a decision that was made in a vacuum. It's a decision made in a very messy context. And that should be how we view it. But that's not how people want to view it. They want to strip away all the context and then they say, oh, see, Rust panic caused Cloudflare to go down and ruin the internet for a day. So Rust bad. And it's like, but there's also lots of stuff that Rust helped prevent. And the same is true of Go. There's many things that, Go has been bad in some ways, but Go has been used great in some ways. And same with LLMs and blockchain and all of these technologies. They're just tools. And we should all be seeing them as tools. And so that's why I'm like, I don't like AI. I still do not like AI. But all of these toolings like agent-based LLMs in general, of machine learning, kind of going back further, like a lot of the other technologies that we associate with AI. Like, I like those technologies. I think those technologies are useful. I want to strip away the AI name from them because that's putting them in this category, putting them in this bucket is unhelpful to their growth and development and unhelpful to the rest of us because it makes it too easy to get confused about things, right? I'll have put in one more example. I was watching a TikTok a couple days ago of there's some really popular songs that are going around on the internet right now, especially on TikTok, that were AI generated. And people are saying, oh, this is so bad. And as a musician, this is terrible. I'm completely against AI. And I was like, wait. What are you really against here? Because I don't see you making the argument that we need to go back to like building analog studios that cost tens of millions of dollars and that everybody should just go back to recording on either magnetic tape or on vinyl. Like, that doesn't seem, you're not saying get rid of the digital audio workstations, get rid of Pro Tools, get rid of Logic. I'm not seeing you say that. What you're mad about is not that this is like AI, right? You just put a bucket around, you put it into a bucket, say this is AI. You're mad that this is a simpler interface to doing things that would have taken a lot of time before, right? Like, if you're going to use a DAW to make these songs, you could do it. You would just have to have more skill. It would have taken more time to produce the same kind of thing. But it's not like AI did something that you couldn't have done. That's not what happened here. But like, that same argument applies to DAWs versus analog. Right? If you want to record a song in the analog realm, that's going to take a lot more time than if you're just using a digital audio workstation where you have all these different plugins and you can do and undo things, where you have virtual instruments, right? You don't have to go buy 500 instruments. You have them. You can just download a pack and then you can just have those instruments. You can use MIDI to play those instruments how you want to play them, to adjust. Oh, you made a mistake. Oh, you can just go adjust something. You don't have to like replay the whole thing. You don't have to do all this work. So like digital audio workstations sped up your ability to produce music, and all this AI stuff is just a further speed up, right? It's just a further amount. It's just like a more efficient interface in a lot of ways. And it's like you're angry that there's a new interface that allows people to do things that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. It would have taken them a long time to build the skills to do otherwise. But labeling as AI makes it easy to be like, that's the bad thing. Like, that's the thing that's the problem. Even though in reality, like, it's not the thing that's the problem. It's like, it's just a new way of doing stuff. Some people will use AI tools to make music, but the vast majority of people will still use traditional DAW tools for the most part. Right? They're going to sit down, they're going to sing into a microphone, they're going to play an instrument, they might, play a keyboard or whatever. There's just like so many different ways to create music, but people are like, I'm against this one new form because I perceive it as bad because it gets bundled up with everything else. And it's like, should we bundle it with everything else? Like, no, we shouldn't. Even the bucket of generative AI is a silly bucket to have because, like, I don't know, aren't compilers in that way generative AI? They take your programming language input and they generate output for different platforms, for different architectures. The decisions that they make are based on a whole bunch of rules that most people don't understand. So in
especially
that way,
when they get to like prediction based compiling, where
Right.
you're trying to like eliminate code or whatever. You can argue that like the part of the compiler that does like 90% of what needs to be done is more just like mapping this to that and more templatey. But then you do get to these areas where the compiler author made a decision where it sees this pattern, do this, and when it sees this other pattern, do that. And that is more intelligence based, right? It's more of an analysis thing because you're making a decision that you might not know is you're making a best guess, right?
Yeah.
Like unfold this loop, for example. If you see this loop iterating 100 times, unfold it and just do the 100 iterations and the 100 operations in once. Like those things become more like what AI is kind of providing us today in different areas, not in the compiler space, but in different areas of life. It's trying to be smarter about converting our human asks into whatever it is we're trying to do. And yeah, I mean, like I let you go on your little monologue, so I was just
that was a long.
Yeah, very long monologue. It was great though, because I hear where you're coming from, where like it's not intelligent in that regard, but it is a useful tool, and we can't get mad. We can't get mad at the fact that I learned in an era before AI existed, so I got the skills to learn. I have this experience to learn, and now someone's coming in, and yeah, they are able to kind of skip past that stuff. And that could make me angry. And that could put me in a position of, I hate AI. That's happened so many other places in life. Like imagine if I grew up in an area where there was just like horse transportation. And then, my child grows up and there's only car transportation. Like I'm going to be mad at them because they have a better form of transportation than I did. And they can get things done. Like, no, I'd be happy because I spent many days and nights traveling by horse that I didn't need to, right? I saved more time. And I think that's where I want people to focus on is not so much of like skepticism and I hate this language or I hate AI, but more of like reevaluating your stance on this and saying, why am I so against Rust? Like really, why am I so against Rust?
Right.
Is it because the learning curve's high and I don't want to take the time to learn it? Or is it because I'm in a crappy job that forced me to write a language I really don't like and Rust would be better, but now I'm jealous? What is it? There's probably something there and people should consider. That's why like with me, yeah, I'm not a big fan of Go in certain areas anymore, right? Like, there's areas of Go that now that I'm experienced, I don't like, and I would change if I could, but I can't, and I'm stuck with it for the projects I need to work on. But I don't go to work every day being like, you know what, Go is the worst, and I hate working here. Like, no, I still do what I got to do, and if I had the option to change, I would. But also, like, I have enough experience to do it. It's fine. But people, they do go to work and they're like, actually, this tool sucks, and everyone should know that it sucks, and I should never, I should fight with everybody that thinks otherwise. And it's like, that's not productive to anybody, man.
Yeah. I think too, I think it's easy for us to also start thinking about this as something that's like unique to us as an industry, but it really is like, it's kind of everywhere. Like I'm on this like new journey of like wanting to learn. A lot of resources, and we should just talk about the things for what they are instead of trying to come up with some, way of categorizing them all together, because it's not serving us.
Agreed.
And with that, I think we should go to break.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, let me do a little outro here. I was gonna ask if you had anything to say, but that might turn into another 10-minute monologue. So we'll save that for break.
Yeah, don't ask me to say anything, because we'll do it in break. Do you have anything to say? Well, actually, I have prepared this paper. I can read it to you, actually.
Yeah. All right. Well, viewer/listener, how did you like that episode? I know we said we were going to talk about the Cloudflare thing, and we did. I think we talked about it in some depth, but I think where our conversation went was, typical for fall through. Got to get to that level of nuance and depth there, but let us know your thoughts. There were a lot of monologues, so let us know whose monologues you like the most, or which of the monologues you like the most on social media and in the comments.
We'll be back to having guests, I promise. We have guests. It's just
we will have guests again.
We're getting there. Yeah.
This episode of Fall Through is hosted by Chris Brando with co-host Matthew Sanabria. Fall Through is produced by Chris Brando and Angelica Hill, and our beats are by Breakmaster Cylinder. We did it! Yay.
And scene.
I don't know why I'm waving my arms, but I'm angry or happy or something. Being a weirdie. An ASMR intro.
I can give you a potato chip chomp right into the mic.
Oh, God.
Oh, I liked that one.
We are a professional and serious podcast. That is what we are. Anyway.
Speak for yourself, but okay. Can we do an ASMR outro?
No.
You know what I mean? Like I know things, I think.
And I was like,
Ding.
that's a good slogan.
Picturing more being like,
It's the sun.
Somebody that I used to go. Ding.
And done.
Ice.
We did it.
We did it.
It's the sun. Yeah.
Perfect introduction. 10 out of 10, no notes.
Goodbye.
Bye, viewer.